have 48 hours. Then I burn everything you've built.
The words hit me like a slap across the face at our dinner party in front of 12 guests, while I was mid-sip of my wine. To the one who pays the bills but never became good in bed. My wife Marta raised her glass with that cruel smile I'd been seeing more often lately, her voice carrying across our dining room like a death sentence. The silence that followed was deafening. 12 pairs of eyes turned to me, waiting to see if David Monroe would finally crack. I set down my glass with deliberate calm, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. 23 years of marriage, and this is how she chose to end it. Not with a private conversation or even a screaming fight, but with public humiliation designed to cut me down to nothing. Happy to be of service, I said, forcing a sardonic smile that felt like swallowing glass. Though I'm curious who you're comparing me to these days. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marta's sister Victoria nearly choked on her salmon. Greg Waters, Marta's business partner at the advertising agency, shifted uncomfortably in his chair, suddenly fascinated by his plate. That told me everything I needed to know. I'd suspected for months. The late nights at work, the secretive phone calls, the way she'd started dressing differently. New lingerie that I never got to see her wear. Credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to. But suspecting and having it confirmed in front of our friends and neighbors were two very different animals. David, I didn't mean, Marta started, but I cut her off with a raised hand. Oh, you meant every word. You've been planning this little performance for weeks, haven't you? Making sure everyone would be here to witness it. I stood up slowly, my 47-year-old knees creaking slightly. As a corporate accountant, I spent most of my days hunched over spreadsheets and financial reports. I wasn't imposing or intimidating. I was the guy who balanced budgets and filed taxes on time. The reliable one, the boring one, the one who apparently wasn't good in bed. You know what, folks? Dinner's over. Thanks for coming. Our guests began awkwardly gathering their things, mumbling excuses and avoiding eye contact. All except Greg, who lingered near the kitchen island, his expensive suit and perfectly styled hair making him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. At 43, he still had the kind of lean build that came from personal trainers and country club tennis matches. Everything I wasn't. David, maybe we should all just calm down, Greg said, his voice carrying that patronizing tone rich people use when dealing with lesser mortals. Marta's had a few drinks. People say things they don't mean. Do they? I turned to face him directly. Tell me, Greg, in your expert opinion, how long should a man tolerate being publicly humiliated by his wife? Is there a handbook for this kind of thing? Greg's face flushed red. I think you're overreacting. Am I, or are you just worried about what else might come to light if we keep talking? The last guests hurried out, leaving just the three of us in the wreckage of our dinner party. Marta had gone pale, finally realizing she'd pushed too far. Greg looked like he wanted to bolt for the door. David, please, Marta said, her voice smaller now. Can we just talk about this privately? Privacy? You forfeited that right about 10 minutes ago. I walked over to the bar cart and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. Besides, Greg's practically family now, isn't he? No need for secrets among family. I'd been married to Marta long enough to know her tells. The way she touched her neck when she was nervous. How she bit her lower lip when she was caught in a lie. The slight tremor in her hands when she was scared. All 3 were on full display now. I think I should go, Greg said, edging toward the door. Oh no, please stay, I insist. I settled into my leather recliner, the one Marta always complained about because it didn't match her carefully curated aesthetic. I'm curious about something. How long have you two been sleeping together? The question hung in the air like smoke. Neither of them answered, but they didn't need to. Marta's sharp intake of breath and Greg's deer in headlights expression told me everything. Let me guess. Started during those late-night strategy sessions about 6 months ago? Maybe that weekend conference in Chicago where you both happened to be staying at the same hotel. David, you don't understand, Marta began. I understand perfectly. You fell out of love with your boring accountant husband and into bed with your exciting business partner. Tale as old as time. What I don't understand is why you didn't just ask for a divorce like a normal person. Because I knew you'd try to take everything, she snapped, her mask finally slipping completely. The house, the cars, half my business. You've always been jealous of my success. There it was, the real Marta. Not the charming creative director everyone else saw. The woman who'd spent years quietly resenting me for not being ambitious enough, successful enough, exciting enough. The woman who'd apparently decided that public humiliation was preferable to an honest conversation about our marriage. Jealous? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Marta, I've been doing your taxes for 15 years. I know exactly how successful you are. I also know about the company credit card charges at that boutique hotel downtown every Tuesday afternoon. The one that's nowhere near your office. Greg had gone completely white. How did you... I'm an accountant, Greg. Numbers are what I do, and the numbers have been telling quite a story lately. I finished my bourbon and set the glass down with a soft clink. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to leave my house right now. Marta, you can come back tomorrow when I'm at work to get whatever you need for the next few days. After that, we'll let the lawyers sort out the rest. You can't just throw me out of my own house, Marta protested. Actually, I can. Check the deed. My name's on it alone, because you insisted your credit was better used for business loans. Funny how these things work out. They left without another word. Greg's arm around Marta's shoulders in a gesture that might have looked comforting if it weren't so obviously possessive. I watched through the front window as they climbed into Greg's silver Porsche and drove away, probably heading to his downtown loft to celebrate their freedom. I poured another bourbon and walked through the house we'd shared for over 2 decades. Every room held memories that now felt contaminated. The kitchen where we'd cooked together in the early years. The living room where we'd watched our kids take their first steps. The bedroom where we'd made love back when she still pretended to enjoy it. My phone buzzed with a text from my old friend Trent Morrison. He'd been at the dinner party, one of the first to leave after Marta's toast. You okay, man? That was brutal. Call me if you need anything. Trent was an ex-cop who now ran a security consulting business. We'd been friends since college, back when I still thought life would be simpler than it turned out to be. He was one of the few people who'd never bought into Marta's charm offensive, always maintaining a polite but distant relationship with her. I typed back, I'm fine, but I might need some professional advice soon. Whatever you need. She crossed a line tonight. That was an understatement. Marta hadn't just crossed a line, and she'd napalmed it and danced on the ashes. But she'd also made a critical mistake. She'd assumed that boring, reliable David would just roll over and take it, that I'd be too embarrassed or too weak to fight back. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I walked upstairs to my home office and pulled out a file folder I'd been quietly building for the past 2 months. Bank statements, credit card records, phone bills, hotel receipts, all the evidence of an affair that Marta thought she'd been hiding so cleverly. The toast that was meant to destroy me had just lit a fire that was going to burn her whole world down. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of heading to my office at Morrison & Associates, I drove across town to meet Trent at a diner that served coffee strong enough to wake the dead. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall. Old habits from his police days, he'd once told me. Trent was built like a linebacker who'd stayed in shape, with graying hair and eyes that missed nothing. He looked up from his newspaper as I slid into the seat across from him. You look like heck, he said without preamble. Feel worse than I look. I signaled the waitress for coffee. Thanks for meeting me on short notice. After last night's performance, wouldn't miss it. That was the most brutal thing I've ever seen at a dinner party, and I once watched my cousin's wife serve her husband divorce papers with the birthday cake. The waitress brought my coffee, and I wrapped my hands around the mug, grateful for the warmth. I need help, Trent, professional help. What kind of help are we talking about? I pulled out the file folder and slid it across the table. The kind that involves gathering evidence and making sure I don't get screwed in the divorce. Trent flipped through the papers, his expression growing more serious with each page. Jesus, David, how long have you been collecting this stuff? 2 months, ever since I noticed the pattern in her spending. Tuesday afternoons at the Meridian Hotel downtown, dinner charges at restaurants I've never been to, new lingerie purchases that never made it home. And you never confronted her? I kept hoping I was wrong. Stupid, right? 23 years of marriage, and I was hoping my wife wasn't cheating on me with her business partner. Trent closed the folder and leaned back in his seat. This is good stuff, but it's all circumstantial. Credit card records and hotel receipts prove she was there, but they don't prove she was with Greg. You need more. That's where you come in. You still have contacts in the private investigation world? A few. But David, are you sure you want to go down this road? Once you start digging, there's no going back. You might find out things you wish you didn't know. I thought about Marta's toast, the way she'd smiled when she delivered it, the look of satisfaction on her face as she watched me crumble in front of our friends. She made that choice for me last night. I'm just evening the playing field. Trent nodded slowly. Okay, I know someone who can help. Lila Stein used to be a journalist before she went into private investigation. She's good at getting information without breaking any laws. How good? Good enough that half the divorce attorneys in the city have her on speed dial. We spent the next hour going over the evidence I'd already collected and planning our next steps. Trent would contact Lila and set up a meeting. I would continue documenting Marta's activities and gathering financial records. Most importantly, I would act normal around Marta when she came to collect her things. Don't let her know you're planning anything, Trent warned. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage right now. I drove home to find Marta's car in the driveway. She was in our bedroom, packing clothes into a suitcase with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this for a while. She looked up when I entered, her face carefully neutral. I thought you'd be at work, she said. Took the day off. Didn't sleep much last night. I sat down in the chair by the window watching her pack. Where are you staying? Victoria's for now. Her sister lived in a condo downtown, close to the advertising agency, also close to Greg's loft, though she didn't mention that part. For now? She paused in her folding. David, we need to talk about what happens next. I thought we covered that last night. Lawyers will sort it out. It doesn't have to be ugly. We can be civilized about this. I almost laughed. Civilized? You humiliated me in front of our friends and neighbors. You've been having an affair for months, but sure, let's be civilized. I never meant for it to happen, she said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. Greg and I, we just connected on a level that you and I never did. It wasn't about the love. Really? Because your toast last night seemed pretty focused on the love. She had the decency to look ashamed. I was drunk. I said things I shouldn't have. You said what you really think. At least you were honest for once. Marta finished packing in silence. When she was done, she turned to face me one last time. I want you to know that I never stopped caring about you, David. We just grew apart. No, Marta, you grew away. There's a difference. After she left, I walked through the house again, noting what she'd taken and what she'd left behind. Clothes, jewelry, personal items. But she'd left the photo albums, the wedding pictures, all the physical reminders of our life together. Like she was already erasing us from her memory. My phone rang. Trent. Lila can meet us tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock at her office downtown. What do I need to bring? Everything you've got, plus a retainer check. She's not cheap, but she's worth it. That evening, I called our kids. Ross was finishing his senior year at Northwestern, studying business. Amelia was a sophomore at the University of Chicago, majoring in psychology. Neither of them knew about the divorce yet, and I dreaded having to tell them. Ross took the news with typical stoicism. I kind of saw this coming, Dad. You and Mom have been like roommates for the past couple years. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Not your fault. Mom's been different lately. More focused on work, less interested in family stuff. Amelia noticed it too. Amelia was more emotional, crying softly over the phone. Is there any chance you guys can work it out? I don't think so, sweetheart. Sometimes people just grow apart. I didn't tell them about Greg. That conversation would have to wait until I had more information about how serious the relationship was. No point in poisoning their relationship with their mother until I knew the full extent of her betrayal. That night, I lay in our king-size bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying the past few months. All the signs I'd missed or chosen to ignore. The way Marta had started working out more, buying new clothes, paying more attention to her appearance. The way she'd become distant and distracted during conversations. The way she'd stopped initiating physical contact and barely tolerated it when I tried. I'd assumed it was a midlife crisis or work stress. I'd never imagined she was planning to replace me entirely. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. She's not worth it, man. Let it go. I stared at the message for a long moment before it clicked. Greg. Somehow he'd gotten my cell number and was trying to play peacemaker. Or maybe he was just worried about what I might do next. I typed back, "Thanks for the advice. I'll take it under consideration." His response came quickly. I'm serious, David. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder for who? You? Because from where I'm sitting, you've already made it plenty hard. This isn't about me, isn't it? You're sleeping with my wife, Greg. That makes it very much about you. The messages stopped after that, but the fact that he'd reached out at all told me he was nervous. Good. He should be. I spent the rest of the evening researching divorce law and property division. As I'd told Marta, the house was in my name alone. So were most of our investment accounts, since I'd handled all the financial planning throughout our marriage. Her business was her own, but I'd helped finance the startup costs and expansion over the years. On paper, I was in a strong position, but I knew Marta well enough to know she wouldn't go down without a fight. She'd try to claim she deserved half of everything based on her contributions to our marriage and household. She might even try to claim that I'd been controlling or financially harmful. The thought made me angry all over again. I'd supported her career from the beginning, even when it meant taking on more household responsibilities and childcare duties. I'd celebrated her successes and consoled her through her failures. I'd been the steady, reliable partner while she chased her dreams, and this was how she repaid me. I fell asleep sometime after midnight, dreaming of silver Porsches and hotel receipts and the sound of Marta's voice delivering that devastating toast. When I woke up, I felt more determined than ever to make sure she paid for what she'd done. The war was just beginning. Lila Stein's office was in a converted warehouse, downtown, sandwiched between a coffee roastery and a vintage clothing store. The building had that deliberately shabby chic aesthetic that was popular in the arts district, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. Lila herself was nothing like what I'd expected. I'd pictured a hard-boiled detective type, maybe someone who looked like she'd stepped out of a film noir. Instead, she was a petite woman in her early 40s with short auburn hair and intelligent green eyes behind designer glasses. She wore a simple black suit that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Mr. Monroe," she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. "Trent's told me a little about your situation. Please, have a seat." Her office was spartanly furnished, but efficient. A desk, 2 chairs, filing cabinets, and a wall of monitors showing various feeds and data streams. She poured coffee from a machine that looked like it belonged in a high-end restaurant and settled behind her desk. "Before we begin, I want to be clear about what I do and don't do," she said. "I gather information through legal means. I don't break into houses, tap phones illegally, or do anything that could get you or me arrested. Everything I find will be admissible in court if it comes to that." "Understood." "Good. Now, show me what you've got." I spread my file across her desk, walking her through the credit card statements, hotel receipts, and phone records. She listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "This is solid circumstantial evidence," she said when I finished, "but you're right to want more. Judges have seen plenty of innocent explanations for business partners spending time together. What we need is definitive proof of the affair." "How do we get that?" "Surveillance. I'll follow them, document their meetings, get photographs if possible. It's tedious work, but it's effective." She quoted me a daily rate that made me wince, but I'd expected it to be expensive. "How long will it take?" "Depends on how careful they're being. If they're meeting regularly, I should have what you need within a week or two." I wrote her a retainer check and signed a contract. As I was getting ready to leave, she stopped me with a question. "What's your end game here, Mr. Monroe? Are you looking to use this information to get a better divorce settlement, or is this about something else?" I thought about her toast, about the humiliation I'd felt in front of our friends. "I want her to face consequences for what she's done. Real consequences, not just a slap on the wrist." Lila nodded. "I understand. But be careful not to let revenge cloud your judgment. The best revenge is usually a clean divorce where you come out ahead financially. We'll see." Over the next week, I fell into a strange routine. I went to work, came home to an empty house, and waited for updates from Lila. She texted me regularly with status reports, always brief and professional. Target observed entering Meridian Hotel at 2:15 p.m. Subject 2 arrived at same location at 2:22 am. Both subjects departed together at 4:45 am. It was clinical and impersonal, but each message felt like a knife twist. These weren't just subjects and targets. They were my wife and her lover, meeting for afternoon trysts, while I sat in my office balancing budgets and filing reports. On Thursday, Lila called with an update. "I've got photographs," she said. "Clear shots of them entering and leaving the hotel together." Also, some pictures of them at dinner last night at that French place on 5th Street. Very intimate body language. Can you email them to me? I'd rather show them to you in person. Can you come by my office tomorrow afternoon? I took another half day off work, claiming a dentist appointment. My boss, Janet Morrison, gave me a concerned look when I made the request. Everything okay, David? You've been taking a lot of time off lately. Just dealing with some personal issues. Nothing that affects my work. If you need to talk, my door's always open. Janet was good people, one of the few bosses I'd had who actually cared about her employees' well-being. But this wasn't the kind of problem that could be solved with a heart-to-heart conversation. At Lila's office, she spread a series of photographs across her desk like she was dealing cards. The images were sharp and clear, taken with a telephoto lens from across the street. Marta and Greg entering the hotel separately but within minutes of each other. Marta and Greg at dinner, her hand covering his on the table. Marta and Greg kissing in the parking lot outside the restaurant. This should be more than enough for your divorce attorney, Lila said. Clear evidence of adultery with timestamps and location data. I stared at the photographs, feeling a mix of vindication and nausea. Part of me had still been hoping I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation for everything. But there it was in black and white. My wife of 23 years was having an affair. There's more, Lila continued. I did some digging into Greg Waters' background. Interesting guy. He's been married twice before. Both marriages ended in divorce. Both ex-wives cited adultery in their filings. So this is a pattern for him. Looks that way. He goes after married women, usually business associates or clients. Classic predator behavior. That made me feel slightly better about Marta, though I wasn't sure why. She was still responsible for her own choices, regardless of Greg's history. What about his current financial situation? That's where it gets interesting. He's leveraged to the hilt. The loft, the Porsche, the country club membership, it's all financed. He's living way beyond his means, probably trying to maintain an image for the business. So he needs Marta's agency to stay afloat. More than that, if I had to guess, I'd say he's planning to push her into a merger or buyout where he comes out as the majority partner. Classic con man move. Seduce the mark, then take over their business. The pieces were starting to fit together. Greg wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was positioning himself to steal her business as well. The question was whether Marta realized it or if she was just another victim of his charm offensive. I need you to keep digging, I told Lila. I want to know everything about Greg Waters, his finances, his business dealings, his personal history, everything. That'll cost extra. I don't care. Money's not an issue. She raised an eyebrow at that, but didn't comment. What are you planning, Mr. Monroe? I'm not sure yet, but I want to be prepared for anything. That evening, I had dinner with Trent at a steakhouse near his office. He listened while I filled him in on Lila's findings, occasionally asking questions or making observations. So what's your next move? He asked over dessert. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to confront them directly, show them the photographs, and watch them squirm. But that might just push them underground. Or it might make them desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. What would you do? Trent considered the question while he finished his coffee. Honestly, I'd use the information strategically. Figure out what you want most, the house, custody of the kids, her business, whatever, and use the affair as leverage to get it. That feels too easy. She humiliated me in front of everyone we know. There should be consequences for that. There will be. Divorce is a consequence. Losing half her assets is a consequence. Having her affair become public record in the court filings is a consequence, but not enough of one. Trent leaned back in his chair, studying my face. You're planning something, aren't you? Maybe. Still thinking it through. Just remember what I told you before. Once you start down this road, there's no going back. Make sure you're prepared for the fallout. I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, past houses where normal couples were probably settling in for the evening, watching TV together, helping kids with homework, planning weekend activities, all the mundane domestic activities that I'd taken for granted until they were gone. My house felt like a mausoleum when I walked in. Too quiet, too empty, too full of memories that now felt poisoned. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my recliner, staring at the wall where our wedding photos used to hang. Marta had taken those when she moved out, along with most of the other pictures of us together. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Greg again. We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's bar tomorrow night at 8. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Why would I want to talk to you? Because this affects all of us. There are things you don't understand. Enlighten me. Not over text. Murphy's bar, 8 p.m., come alone. It was obviously a trap of some kind, but I was curious enough to consider it. What could Greg possibly have to say that would justify a face-to-face meeting? Was he going to try to buy me off, threaten me, confess his undying love for my wife? I texted back, I'll think about it. But I'd already made up my mind. I was going to that meeting, and I was going to find out exactly what Greg Waters thought he could say to make the situation better. It was time to look my wife's lover in the eye and let him know that David Monroe wasn't going to roll over and play dead. Murphy's Bar was the kind of place where middle-aged men went to drink away their disappointments, dark wood paneling, sports on multiple TVs, and the lingering smell of fried food and spilled beer. It was about as far from Greg's usual upscale haunts as you could get, which probably meant he'd chosen it because he didn't want to be seen by anyone he knew. I arrived 15 minutes early and claimed a booth in the back corner where I could watch the entrance. Greg showed up exactly at 8, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit among the construction workers and office drones who made up Murphy's regular clientele. He spotted me immediately and walked over, sliding into the seat across from me with the cautious movements of a man entering enemy territory. Thanks for coming, he said. This better be good. I'm missing a very important date with my couch and a bourbon. Greg signaled the waitress and ordered a beer, something domestic that probably cost a tenth of what he usually drank. I know you hate me right now, and I understand why. But I need you to hear me out. I'm listening. He took a long pull from his beer, gathering his thoughts. First, I want you to know that I never intended for things to go this far with Marta. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Greg. People make choices. You're right. I made a choice, and so did she. But it wasn't about hurting you. Really? Then what was it about? It was about two people who were lonely finding each other. Marta's been unhappy for years, David. Surely you knew that. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. I had known Marta was unhappy, or at least dissatisfied. I just hadn't known what to do about it. So this is my fault? No, it's nobody's fault. Sometimes marriages just run their course. Sometimes people grow apart. Cut the therapy speak, Greg. You didn't ask me here to discuss the philosophical nature of marriage. What do you want? He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I want to make this as painless as possible for everyone involved. Marta feels terrible about the way she handled things the other night. The toast, the public humiliation, that wasn't planned. She was drunk and angry, and she lashed out. Angry about what? About being trapped in a marriage that stopped working years ago. About feeling like she had to sneak around to find some happiness. About feeling guilty for falling in love with someone else. Love, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think this is love? I know it is, for both of us. How romantic. So what's your proposal? I quietly disappear so you two can ride off into the sunset together? I'm proposing that we handle this like adults. You and Marta get divorced, split your assets fairly, and everyone moves on with their lives. And you get the girl without any consequences. There are always consequences, David, but they don't have to be destructive ones. I finished my bourbon and signaled for another. Here's what I don't understand, Greg. You're a successful businessman. You could have any number of single women. Why go after someone else's wife? He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his beer. Because she's extraordinary. She's brilliant and creative and passionate about everything she does. She lights up a room when she walks into it. She used to light up rooms for me, too, before you came along. Did she? Or had you just stopped noticing? Another accusation that hit uncomfortably close to home. Had I stopped noticing Marta's brilliance? Had I taken her for granted? Had I become so focused on the practical aspects of our life together that I had forgotten why I fell in love with her in the first place? Maybe I had, I admitted. But that doesn't justify what you did. You could have walked away. You could have told her to work on her marriage before starting something new. I tried, but she said it was too late for that. When? When did she say that? Months ago, when we first started getting close. She said you and she were like roommates, going through the motions, but not really connected anymore. That hurt worse than anything else he could have said because I recognized the truth in it. Marta and I had become roommates. Comfortable, but not passionate. Familiar, but not intimate. We'd settled into routines and stopped making an effort with each other. So what happens now? I asked. Now we all try to move forward as gracefully as possible. You file for divorce, we negotiate a fair settlement, and everyone gets on with their lives. Just like that? Just like that. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. He seemed sincere. But then again, he'd seemed sincere when he was sitting at my dinner table while sleeping with my wife. What if I don't want to be graceful about it? What if I want to fight? Then everyone loses. You, me, Marta, your kids. Is that really what you want? I don't know what I want yet. But I know what I don't want. I don't want to be the understanding ex-husband who graciously steps aside so his wife can be happy with someone else. Greg leaned back in his seat, his expression hardening slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying that actions have consequences. Marta humiliated me in front of our friends. You've been lying to my face for months while screwing my wife. Did you really think I'd just roll over and take it? David, I'm trying to be reasonable here. No, you're trying to manage the situation. You're trying to control the narrative and minimize the damage to yourself and Marta. But you don't get to do that. You don't get to cheat with someone's wife and then dictate the terms of how they respond. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. Thanks for the drink and the conversation. It's been very illuminating. David, wait. He grabbed my arm as I started to leave. Don't do something you'll regret. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. Let go of me, Greg. He released my arm but didn't back down. I'm serious. If you try to hurt Marta or damage her business, I'll stop you. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I smiled, feeling genuinely amused for the first time in days. You know what, Greg? I almost hope you try. Because right now, I've got nothing left to lose, and that makes me very dangerous. I walked out of Murphy's bar feeling better than I had since the night of the dinner party. The conversation had clarified things for me. Greg wasn't just an opportunist who'd seduce my wife. He was an arrogant predator who thought he could manipulate the situation to his advantage. And Marta wasn't just an unhappy wife who'd made a mistake. She was a calculating woman who'd been planning her exit strategy for months. They both deserved whatever was coming to them. I drove home and called Lila. I need you to dig deeper into Greg's business dealings, I told her. I want to know about every deal he's made, every contract he's signed, every penny he owes. If there's anything shady or questionable, I want to know about it. What are you planning? I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve. David, be careful. Revenge has a way of consuming people. Maybe. But some people deserve to be consumed. I hung up and poured myself another bourbon. Tomorrow, I would start making calls to lawyers, to accountants, to anyone who might have information about Greg Waters and his business practices. I would use every resource at my disposal to find his weaknesses and exploit them. Marta had started this war with her toast, but I was going to finish it. Lila called me 3 days later with news that changed everything. You're going to want to sit down for this, she said. I was in my office at Morrison & Associates reviewing quarterly reports for a manufacturing client. What did you find? Greg Waters is in serious financial trouble, worse than I initially thought. He's got creditors circling, loan payments he can't make, and at least 3 lawsuits pending against his business. What kind of lawsuits? Breach of contract, mostly. Clients claiming he took their money and didn't deliver the promised services. But here's the interesting part. I think he's been using Marta's agency to prop up his failing business. I set down my pen and gave her my full attention. How? Joint contracts where his company is listed as a subcontractor, but the work is actually being done by Marta's people. Shared office expenses that are being paid entirely by her agency. Equipment purchases that went to his office, but were charged to her accounts. That's fraud. It's definitely questionable. And if Marta doesn't know about it, it's fraud. If she does know about it, she's complicit. Can you prove it? I'm working on it. I've got a contact at the county clerk's office who's pulling business filings and financial disclosures. Should have more information by tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat staring out my office window at the parking lot below. Cars coming and going, people going about their normal lives, while mine fell apart and rebuilt itself into something unrecognizable. My phone buzzed with a text from Amelia. Dad, can you call me? I need to talk to you about something. I called her immediately. What's wrong, sweetheart? I talked to Mom yesterday. Her voice was tight with emotion. She told me about Greg. My heart sank. What did she say? She said they're in love. She said she's been unhappy for years and Greg makes her feel alive again. She said you're trying to make the divorce ugly and vindictive. What do you think? I think she's lost her mind. Dad, she's talking about moving in with him. She's talking about selling the house and splitting the proceeds. She's talking about you like you're the villain in all this. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, Amelia. Are you going to fight her? Because if you are, I want you to know that Ross and I support you. What she did at the dinner party was unforgivable. You heard about that? Trent's daughter, Sarah, was there. She told everyone at school. Mom humiliated you in front of the whole neighborhood, and now she's acting like you're the problem. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my children's loyalty and disappointment. I'm going to do what I have to do to protect our family and our future. Good, because Greg Waters is a creep and Mom's making the biggest mistake of her life. That evening, I met Trent for dinner at a quiet restaurant across town. He listened while I filled him in on Lila's discoveries and my conversation with Amelia. So what's your plan? He asked. I'm going to destroy him. Professionally, financially, socially. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man Greg Waters is. And Marta? If she's innocent in the business fraud, she'll be collateral damage. If she's complicit, she'll get what she deserves. Trent frowned. That's a dangerous game, David. If you go after them too aggressively, you could end up looking like the bad guy. I'm already the bad guy in Marta's version of events. Might as well earn the title. What about your kids? They're going to be caught in the crossfire. They already are. At least this way, they'll know their father didn't just roll over and take it. The next morning, Lila called with the smoking tool I'd been hoping for. I've got him, she said. Greg's been systematically defrauding Marta's agency for at least 6 months. Fake invoices, diverted payments, inflated expenses. He's stolen close to $200,000. Does Marta know? Hard to say. Either she's the most trusting business partner in history, or she's been deliberately looking the other way. Can you prove it? I've got copies of bank records, invoices, and email correspondence. It's all there in black and white. Send me everything. I'm going to pay Greg a visit. David, be careful. If you confront him directly, he might destroy evidence or flee. He's not going anywhere. He's too arrogant to run. I took the afternoon off and drove to Greg's office in the trendy part of downtown. His company, Waters Creative Solutions, occupied half a floor in a converted warehouse building. The reception area was all glass and steel, designed to impress clients with its modern sophistication. The receptionist, a young woman with purple hair and multiple piercings, looked up when I entered. I'm here to see Greg Waters, I said. Do you have an appointment? Tell him David Monroe is here. He'll want to see me. She made a call, spoke quietly for a moment, then hung up. He'll be right out. Greg appeared a few minutes later, looking surprised and wary. David, what are you doing here? We need to talk, privately. He led me to his office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture. The walls were covered with awards and framed advertisements from successful campaigns. It was the office of a man who wanted everyone to know how successful he was. What's this about? He asked, closing the door behind us. I pulled out a manila folder and set it on his desk. It's about the $200,000 you've stolen from Marta's agency. The color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Fake invoices, diverted payments, inflated expenses. You've been using her business as your personal piggy bank. He sat down heavily in his chair, staring at the folder like it was a snake. How did you find out? I'm an accountant, Greg. Numbers are what I do, remember? David, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like. Really? Then explain it to me. The agency was having cash flow problems. I was just borrowing against future earnings to keep us both afloat. Without telling Marta, I didn't want to worry her. How noble of you. I'm sure she'll appreciate your thoughtfulness when she finds out you've been embezzling from her. Greg's composure finally cracked. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife. I can't do that. I love her. No, you don't. You're using her just like you used your previous wives. Just like you're using her business to cover your debts. That's not true. I opened the folder and spread some of the documents across his desk. Bank statements, invoices, email printouts. The evidence says otherwise. He stared at the papers, his hands shaking slightly. If you take this to the police, it'll destroy both of us. Marta's agency will be ruined. Maybe, or maybe she'll be better off without a partner who's been stealing from her. David, please. We can work something out. I'm listening. I'll pay back every penny with interest. Just give me time. How? You're broke, remember? Your business is failing, you're leveraged to the hilt, and you've got creditors breathing down your neck. I'll figure something out. I gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. Here's what's going to happen, Greg. You're going to end your relationship with Marta immediately. You're going to dissolve your business partnership with her agency, and you're going to disappear from our lives completely. And if I don't, then I take this evidence to the police, the state attorney general, and every business reporter in the city. Your career will be over and you'll probably go to prison. You're bluffing. I stood up and headed for the door. Try me. David, wait. His voice was desperate now. What about Marta? She loves me. Marta loves the idea of you. The successful businessman, the charming partner, the exciting alternative to her boring husband. She doesn't love the real you, the broke con man who's been stealing from her. You don't know her like I do. I've known her for 23 years, Greg. I know exactly who she is and what she values. And when she finds out what you've been doing, she'll drop you like a hot rock. I left him sitting in his expensive office, staring at the empty folder on his desk. By the time I reached the parking garage, I was smiling for the first time in weeks. The war was far from over, but I'd just won a major battle. I didn't have to wait long for Greg's response. He called me at home that evening, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. I need more time, he said without preamble. Time for what? To figure out how to pay back the money without destroying everything. That's not my problem, Greg. It will be if you expose this. Marta will lose her business, your kids will lose their college funds, and you'll be responsible for destroying the innocent people's lives. Innocent people? Like the wife you've been cheating on me with? David, please, I'm begging you. Give me 30 days to make this right. I let the silence stretch out, enjoying the sound of his desperation. What exactly are you proposing? I'll end things with Marta. I'll dissolve our business partnership. I'll pay back every penny I took from her agency. How? You just told me you're broke. I'll sell the loft, the car, whatever it takes. I'll liquidate everything and pay her back. And then what? You disappear into the sunset and I pretend none of this ever happened? Something like that. I walked over to the window and looked out at the quiet suburban street. A few houses down, the Hendersons were walking their dog. Normal people living normal lives, blissfully unaware of the drama playing out in their neighborhood. Not good enough, I said finally. What do you mean? I mean you don't get to just walk away from this, Greg. You've caused too much damage, hurt too many people. There have to be consequences. What kind of consequences? I'm still deciding, but I'll tell you what. I'll give you 48 hours to end things with Marta and confess what you've been doing to her business. If you don't, I'll do it for you. David, I hung up on him and immediately called Lila. I need you to keep an eye on Greg Waters for the next few days, I told her. I just gave him an ultimatum and I want to make sure he doesn't try to run. What kind of ultimatum? The kind that ends with him confessing his crimes to my wife. And if he doesn't, then I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man she's been sleeping with. The next day was Saturday and I spent it cleaning house, literally and figuratively. I went through every room, packing up the remaining traces of Marta's presence. Photos, books, decorative items she'd left behind. Everything went into boxes that I stacked in the garage. I was in the middle of dismantling her home office when Amelia called. Dad, I just got off the phone with Mom. She's really upset about something, but she won't tell me what. Do you know what's going on? Greg's probably telling her about our conversation yesterday. What conversation? I gave her a sanitized version of events, leaving out the details about the embezzlement, but explaining that I'd confronted Greg about the affair. Good, she said when I finished. It's about time someone called him on his BS. Language, sweetheart. Sorry, but I'm serious. Ross and I never liked him. There was always something creepy about the way he looked at Mom. What do you mean? Like she was a prize he'd won, like he owned her or something. It made our skin crawl. That afternoon, Marta called me directly for the first time since she'd moved out. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About what? About Greg. About the things you've been saying to him. What things? Don't play dumb, David. He told me you threatened him. Did he tell you why? He said you're trying to destroy his business out of spite. Is that all he told you? There was a pause. What else is there? Why don't you ask him? Or better yet, why don't you take a close look at your agency's books? Really close. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you to audit your business partnership with Greg Waters. Check every invoice, every expense report, every bank transfer, see if the numbers add up. David, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that your boyfriend has been stealing from you, Marta, for months. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. That's impossible, she said finally. Is it? When's the last time you actually reviewed the financial statements? When's the last time you checked to make sure the money going out matched the services coming in? Greg handles most of the financial side of things. I focus on the creative work. How convenient for Greg. You're lying. You're making this up to hurt him. Am I? Then prove me wrong. Go to your office right now and pull the bank records, check the invoices against the work that was actually performed. See for yourself. I'm not going to. Yes, you are. Because deep down, you know something's been wrong. You've noticed the discrepancies, the missing money, the expenses that didn't make sense. You just chose to ignore them because you were too busy falling in love to pay attention to business. I hung up on her and immediately called Lila. Is Greg at his office? I asked. No, he left about an hour ago. Looked like he was in a hurry. Any idea where he went? I followed him to Marta's agency. He's been there for the past 45 minutes. Keep watching. I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting. I was right. Lila called me back 2 hours later with an update. Greg just left Marta's office carrying a box of files and what looked like a laptop computer. Marta was right behind him, screaming at him in the parking lot. Could you hear what she was saying? Something about lies and betrayal and calling the police. I think she found what you wanted her to find. Where's Greg now? Driving toward downtown? Want me to follow him? No, let him go. The damage is done. That evening, Marta showed up at my front door. She looked terrible, red-eyed from crying, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her clothes wrinkled like she'd been sleeping in them. You were right, she said when I opened the door. About what? About Greg, about the money, about everything. I stepped aside to let her in, and she walked past me into the living room like a ghost haunting her former life. How much did he take? I asked. $230,000, maybe more. He was very good at hiding it. She sat down on the couch staring at her hands. I trusted him completely. I let him handle the finances because I thought he was better at that stuff than I was. What are you going to do? I don't know. My lawyer says I should file a police report, but that means admitting I was negligent in overseeing my own business. It could ruin my reputation. Your reputation's already ruined, Marta. The question is whether you're going to let Greg get away with stealing from you. She looked up at me with eyes full of pain and confusion. How did you know? How did you figure it out when I couldn't? Because I wasn't sleeping with him. Because I wasn't blinded by romance and flattery and the excitement of doing something forbidden. I'm sorry, David. I'm so sorry for everything. The affair, the toast, the way I treated you. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far. What did you mean for it to be? I don't know. A fling, maybe? Something to make me feel young and desirable again. I never thought I'd fall in love with him. Did you? Fall in love with him? She was quiet for a long time, tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought I did, but now I realize I fell in love with a lie. Everything about him was fake. Not everything. The part where he seduced a married woman and stole from her business. That was real. She flinched at my words, but didn't argue. What happens now? Now you file that police report. You cooperate with the investigation. You try to recover as much of your money as possible. And us? What happens to us? I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 23 years, the stranger who'd shared my bed and raised my children, and then betrayed me in the most public way possible. There is no us anymore, Marta. You made sure of that. I know, I wanted to apologize. To try to explain. You don't need to explain anything. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. She nodded and stood up, walking toward the door with the slow, careful movements of someone who'd been broken and was trying not to fall apart completely. For what it's worth, she said, turning back to me one last time, you're a better man than I deserved. Yes, I said, I am. After she left, I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my recliner, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The war wasn't over yet. There would still be lawyers and court dates and property division to deal with. But the important battle had been won. Greg Waters was finished, professionally and personally. Marta had learned the hard way that actions have consequences. and I had proven to myself that David Monroe wasn't the pushover everyone thought he was. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding my life, but tonight I was going to savor the victory.